I've heard it a lot over the years. People often complain about how complicated spirituality is and why are the texts so difficult to understand and why don't they make it easier? And I've said, listen, Jesus made it pretty simple when he said, know ye not ye are gods, right? But people have a hard time embracing that, right? It's challenging to, especially for the ego, to understand. What does he mean, gods? I mean, I'm a god too. Buddha, one of his first truths that he realized was that we're all Buddha, and we have Buddha nature inside of all of us. In other words, we're the equivalent of those teachers. That's what they're trying to tell us. But it can be complicated to get there. This particular lecture is from my friend Rosie, who she asks me all the time. Not only do they make it too complicated, she tells me I make it too complicated. So she wants something more simple. So I'm doing what I call spirituality made easy. And it's about as easy as I can make it beyond know ye not ye are gods. Right? Once you figure out you're a god of some sort, that sort of changes everything. But we don't really believe that, do we? Well, that's why we have a lot of work to go through. And so I'm going to make it as simple as possible, using the most simple of ideas, backed by all of the prophets and their various teachings to try to prove it, okay? And it's this little drawing right here. It's so simple. Either you're filled with the light or you're not. We're somewhere in between. Because that's all it's about. Just that concept. Everything comes from that concept. So we're going to go through it. It's a really simple idea. Number one, we all need fuel to operate. Very similar to a lawnmower. You might get a brand new lawnmower, but if you don't fill it with gas, it's not going to work, right? What if someone tells you, oh, your lawnmower's not working, you should put some liquid in there, and you put in milk? It's not going to work if you put in the wrong kind of fuel, right? So lawnmowers need a certain kind of fuel. Our cars are like that, and most things with tanks, they require a certain kind of fuel. We require a certain kind of fuel. That kind of fuel defines whether or not we're going to operate. And if we're on empty, we're not going to operate. And if we have the wrong fuel in us, we're not going to operate. Well, there's a kind of fuel that I call premium grade fuel. It's the Tao, or the Holy Spirit, which I see as the same thing. Okay? And that's premium grade fuel. And if you put that in your lawnmower, you're going to run very well. In fact, you're going to do exactly what you need to do. Lawnmowers are designed to do what they do. You're designed to do something too. But if you have the wrong fuel in you, it's not going to work. Everything else is a poor substitute. And we experience that as an absence of peace. If you're not being run by the Tao, if you don't have the Holy Spirit coursing through your veins, you're going to have lack of peace. And from that place comes what happens next. Our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors occur in direct correlation with our fuel. And so if we're not being run by the Tao or the Holy Spirit, we're not going to like how we feel. This is what we talked about earlier. This is like the shock collar you might have on a dog, right? What happens when the dog strays out of its territory? Okay? And what does that tell it to do? Get back in your lane. I often say it's like walking on a tightrope, right? You better be focused. What if you don't walk in the right direction? You're going to fall off, okay? And each of us have different tightropes to walk. But we all have the same consequences. We lack peace when we step out of our lane. It's really simple to understand. You get zapped every time. And what does the ego do? Immediately blames other. Right? Goes straight to that. Okay, who zapped me? It's their fault. Okay? Oh, no. If you want to be the God level conscious, you're going to take responsibility for those zaps. Okay? And that's going to help. It'll help define, your behaviors later. But what's the premium grade fuel do? One, it keeps you crazily balanced. Wonderfully balanced. It also changes your thoughts, changes your feelings, changes your behaviors, because you're run by this specific kind of fuel, which, by the way, is available to everybody. Right? And so it's that simple. Either you get filled with it or you don't. Matthew 5:37, Jesus says specifically, all you do is say yes or no. How much more easy can you get to that? Well, what is he referring to? Well, he's saying yes to the spiritual development or no to the spiritual development. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. We'll go through some more of it in a minute. But I want to just show you again that ultimately all the prophets are saying this. See, when we are good, it is due to our fuel. And when we are bad, I made sure I put that in quotes, right? When we are bad, it is due to our fuel. It's not because of us. See, the ego wants to say things like, I'm good and I'm bad. As if the lawnmower is going to take credit for what it does. Where would the lawnmower be without the fuel? See, the lawnmower was designed to do what it does, and then the fuel makes it happen. Well, we are also designed, a lot of it is our conditioning, circumstances of our lives, some of our DNA, destiny, all of that. But we'll never reach it if we don't have the right fuel. So we want to say all of the good stuff happens because the premium grade fuel, and all the bad stuff is because of not that. And of course, that's not just us, it's everyone. Pretty easy way to see the world as fair. We've got to get the right fuel in us. Now, a lot of people are like, really? No, I think I'm in control of my behaviors, and it's not just about the fuel. All right, let me show you what all the religions and all the prophets, and I don't have a big enough board to cover all of this. So I just went with some of the juiciest quotes so you can see it directly, and this is what they're talking about. Ephesians 2:9 says, no one shall boast. It's through grace alone that we are saved. Why shall no one boast? Well, our circumstances sort of matter. And our conditions, and who mommy and daddy were, and who our teachers were, and what our DNA is, and if we have mental health or physical health issues, and on and on and on, our conditions matter a whole lot. And that's why people do a lot of what they do. But we can't see what's going on inside them, which is known as the fuel, okay? And if the fuel is the reason why someone's succeeding, then that's what gets the credit. You don't get to boast about your successes in that regard. You actually give credit to the premium grade fuel that's in you. Luke 23:34, Jesus says, forgive them, they know not what they do. Well, he's referring to the people who don't have premium grade fuel, including those who killed him. But all people who do bad things, forgive them because they don't know. Because if you knew what you're supposed to be doing, as hopefully we do, we'd be working on it. And then you could also easily see you would give credit to something else, which is what Jesus does in John 5:30. He says, I'm doing nothing. Jesus said he's doing nothing. All he's doing is listening to his Father that is inside of him, giving him direction. And that Father is the Holy Spirit. God the Father, the Creator, and the fuel is the Holy Spirit. That's what he pays attention to. And that's what he was as the system down here in the physical world called being a human. That's how we run, based upon the fuel that's in us. And Jesus says, hey, it's not me. If he didn't have the Holy Spirit in him, then he'd be doing other things. Then in the Bhagavad Gita, maybe one of my favorite quotes of all time, and there's lots of lines in the Gita. This is Krishna teaching Arjuna about the nature of the world. And Krishna says to Arjuna, all actions are performed by nature alone. The self is not an actor. That's radical. How many people realize that they're not behaving? Nature's doing it. Okay? How's nature doing it? It's because it's a combination of the fuel and the chemistry that made up your body and the circumstances you found yourself in. You're just having an experience. That's all you're doing. And then you get to make the choice, the free will choice, yes or no, how you perceive said experience. We're going to end with that. How are you perceiving your experience? Einstein once said the most important decision you make is whether or not you live in a friendly or a hostile universe. Well, guess what? If you perceive hostile, boom, different kind of fuel. If you receive friendly, different kind of fuel. And this is, by the way, before we get to behaviors, because then this is super important. There's a mind that we all have, that we all share, known as the Lord, that's inside of us, that can get fueled by the premium grade, okay? And from that place, your behaviors do change. But this doesn't mean we don't care about things. In fact, we become more effective at those things. So, the self is not an actor literally means you're not doing anything. You're doing things in accordance with the energy that's running you. The Kabbalah teaches that there's an upper world and a lower world. The upper world is the world of causes. The lower world, the one we're in, is the world of effects. And they say there's nothing that's happening down here that's happening because of anything that we're doing. Nothing. They also teach 100% of everything that happens to you down here happens for the same reason, to get you to connect to the upper world. The Lord's Prayer, it's right there, on earth as it is in heaven. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Bringing the Spirit, the Tao says it too. We're supposed to be bringing the Tao to earth. That's our job, to perceive the upper light. Right? And if you perceive the upper light, you bring that into form. And then you act from that place. That's how it has to be. And it's not going to work, as we say, if we do things the way the ego wants to do it, which is mostly complaining about things and trying to control things and all of that. We can't do that. We will not succeed. So the upper world is imprinting itself on the lower world, and we're in the lower world. Now we go. And again, I could do about this entire book. This is Wayne Dyer's book on the Tao Te Ching. And the whole thing is filled with this kind of stuff. But I'm just going to pick a couple verses here. From the Tao, verse 18 says, when the greatness of the Tao is present, action arises from one's own heart. When the greatness of the Tao is absent, action comes from rules of kindness and justice. It's actually a little snarky here, I think. Rules, okay? This is how you should be. This is how you should behave. And if that's why you're doing it, it says, if you need rules to be kind and just, and if you act virtuous, this is a sure sign that virtue is absent. And thus we see the great hypocrisy. Why are we doing what we're doing? Is it to impress other people? Or if you actually experience the Tao, what happens? It happens naturally, just automatically from your own heart. It springs from your own heart what it is you should say and do. And of course, you're not going to try to take credit for it. Because you know, again, everyone has that inside themselves as well. And we would act in accordance with that, as long as we all knew that. 37, the Tao does nothing, but leaves nothing undone. If powerful men could center themselves in it, the whole world would be transformed by itself in its natural rhythms. Most of us are interested in the world changing one way or another, right? Well, how? By centering yourself in the Tao. By getting this premium grade fuel. And then the world transforms itself by its own natural rhythms. That's what the Gita said, same thing. It's nature that's doing it, its own natural rhythms. And then you are a willing participant in the healing of the world because you're going with the flow of it, as opposed to resisting and doubting and shaming and all the negatives and all that stuff, which we know, by the way, shock color doesn't work because it feels bad, zap. And then as soon as you learn that lesson, you're like, okay, I must shift my perception. The entire book, Course in Miracles, is about that. Miracles are a shift in perception. And every time we get zapped, shift your perception. It's not talking about shifting your behaviors or judging other people differently. It's about shifting your perception. Why? So the Tao can fuel you. That's what we want to have fuel us. And then 38, a truly good man is not aware of his goodness. Jesus saw him doing nothing. A good man is not aware of his goodness, and therefore he is good. A foolish man tries to be good and is therefore not good. See, if you're trying, you're doing it from the level of the ego, right? And like you need to impress somebody or whatever. You're not going to tap into the Tao like that. The master does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. Isn't that beautiful? Because once the fuel's in you, it's like on autopilot. And then you just do what you need to do. You say what you need to say. Luke 12:12 says the Holy Spirit will tell you the words. If you're trying to think of the right thing to say, it's not the Holy Spirit, right? But the flow just tells you what to say and tells you what to do. And that's why the master doesn't try to take credit for it. You're like, okay, I'm not doing nothing. But he's a master. Why is he master? Because he figured out how to get the Tao in him, right? He recognized what Jesus meant by, I just need the Spirit in me. The ordinary man is always doing things, yet many more are still left to be done. Meaning, how busy are we trying to do things? We were talking about that earlier with the Samadhi video, about how you can't do anything to access the Holy Spirit. What you have to do is just seek it or ask for it. And that only comes from the heart. It's not like saying, more Holy Spirit, please. Okay, good luck with that. But I like to say, you can't fool Mother Nature. If you're authentically seeking unity, you authentically get the Tao. It's like an even exchange. But if you're seeking the Tao or any type of spiritual development so you can prove your point or try to win some battle in the physical world, you're not going to get it. There's going to be plenty of teachings coming up on that. So all the prophets are saying, through one way or another, and the Tao, of course, is one of the oldest philosophies, saying the same sort of thing. There has to be some sort of getting yourself out of the way, okay? Well, how do we want to do this then? How do we do it? To access the premium grade fuel, the ego must decrease. Now, that's something John teaches. I must decrease, so he may increase. If you think of it as the Lord inside of yourself or the Spirit inside of yourself, in order for that to increase, the ego, in Greek, I is ego, the ego has to decrease. Plenty of ways to practice that. And as that decreases, it's the default. It naturally, the Spirit just shows up. And so here's a whole bunch of teachings that back that up. The word Islam itself means submit. It doesn't mean to submit to men. Okay? It doesn't mean that at all. It means to submit to Allah. God, nature's rules, all of that. The ego has to submit to truth. Muslim literally means one who has submitted. Someone who has succeeded at it is to surrender to the process. And that just means the ego. It doesn't mean your behaviors are going to surrender. In fact, you'll be more effective, not less. So Islam teaches this. Luke 22:42, Jesus says, "Not my will be done, but thy will." He's literally saying, I don't really want this to happen. This is about his crucifixion. I don't want this to happen, but I surrender to God's will. And then he proceeded. He didn't just sit down and refuse to act. He still walked to the cross, and he still did what he needed to do because the Spirit was running him at that point. This does not mean quitting. Surrender does not mean quitting. We're talking on the level of the ego and the mind. That's the thing that has to quit. The thing that has to stop resisting so much. Tao, verse 69. Again, this is for people who want to access the premium grade fuel. There is no greater misfortune than feeling, quote, I have an enemy. For when I and enemy exist together, there is no room left for my treasure. Meaning the Tao doesn't enter anyone or fuel anyone if we've got this battle, argument going on between enemies. What did Jesus say about enemies? Love them. See, that's what's going to get the Holy Spirit in you. From that place, of course, the treasure shows up, and now you've got premium grade fuel. Now your behaviors are elite. Now you're going to say the right things. And again, this isn't quitting in any way. We're not talking about physical surrender. We're talking about the surrender of the ego, which we all know is the biggest problem that we have. Thus, when two opponents meet, the one without an enemy will surely triumph. That's awesome, because if you want to try to win something, even in the physical world, you're going to be stronger if you don't perceive the other person as an enemy. Why? Well, Rumi says we're only here to do one thing. What are we here to do? We're here to connect to our divinity. He says you could do a million other things, but if you don't connect to your divinity, you've done nothing at all. But if all you've done is connect to your divinity, then you've done everything. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Connecting your divinity does not happen if we stay attached to outcomes. Noble truth number 3, the Buddha teaches that we must detach. That's the only way to get to where we need to go. Doesn't mean quitting, it's just another way to say surrender. Another way to say submit. That voice inside my head that says this is how it's supposed to be, that's the thing that's got to change. And as that changes, and again, it happens in the moment, the universe heals through us as a result. Because who's really good at affecting change? Where are we at in 2025 with affecting change in the world? How good are we doing? Right? And Mother Teresa herself died very depressed because she's like, why isn't this place getting better? Okay? Well, it's because we're trying to fix it from the level of the ego. You can maintain your causes, just do it from the level of the spirit. You're saved in the process, so to speak. Christ consciousness comes to you, and now you're more effective in your goals, whatever they may be. That includes politics and your golf game and your recovery and mental health and all of that. Win, 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 win. Now you're going to be great at the game. So we're not saying quitting on the physical world. We're saying get premium grade fuel in you. Back to the Bhagavad Gita. And again, to me, this is perhaps the most elite way to perceive this for people who want premium grade fuel. Krishna teaches, when you perceive unity existing in separate creatures, you attain the infinite spirit. Now that's as easy as it's going to get, okay? And say it's easy to do. It's as easy to understand. When you perceive unity existing in separate creatures, you attain the infinite spirit. He could have said, when you see all others as in the same position as you, now you'll be fueled by the Holy Spirit. Now the Tao will come into you. Now, you're not going to do that physically because we all look different. And we have a whole lot of different opinions throughout the world. But I do have to look at you and see that you have the same exact opportunities as me in this regard. Right? And I have to see that a little piece of God was placed inside of you just as was inside of me. We started with that. Know ye not your gods? Buddha, 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 namaste, namaste. All those types of teachings. What are they saying? The light in me honors the light in you. You're also Buddha. Jesus says, you're the light of the world. I mean, they do get pretty clear there, don't they? And so when you perceive the unity existing in separate creatures, you have to be able to see that enemy as somehow linked to you. If you do it like the Tao says, it's just the enemy straight up, guess what? Tao's not present. You have to somehow pull that into your realm. The ego hates that, doesn't it? The ego says, I'm not going to love my enemy. Screw that. All right, well, okay. And then mental health and addiction and fighting and all that stuff persists. And yet the greatest of teachers are all saying, nope, got to do it different. Perceive that, and then the infinite spirit comes into you. And now it's premium grade fuel, and now let's see what you can do. That's how the world will change from that place. From the loving of the enemy. Now we'll be effective in our goals, right? In the very least, we'll die at peace like Jesus himself, right? 2,000 years later, are we doing much better? I don't know if we are. But Jesus got out of here, right? Buddha did the same thing. He ascended. Where's he now? Where are those two dudes? They escaped samsara, didn't they? Okay? And then they're teaching us from beyond, and they left their spirit here, and all that kind of stuff. What were Buddha's last words? Strive for your own liberation with diligence. That's selfish. But it's the only way that can be done. All you can do is fill yourself with the Spirit. Then what happens? You can help others get filled with the Spirit. That's it. That's the only game that's being played. Everything else is secondary. We end with this. I switched over here because I realized this would be a great way to end. That's F. The Course in Miracles says that. An unbelievable teaching right in the middle of it. And it says that the secret to salvation is this. You are doing this to yourself. Well, that's radical, okay? Especially in this world. That surely doesn't look like it. But what is it saying? It's not talking about the fairness of the physical world, because we know that's exceedingly unfair, okay? I'm not talking about human fairness and all the bad stuff that happens. We want to change that, of course we do. But what's the secret to salvation? What are we doing to ourselves? We're choosing the fuel. That's the only thing that we're doing to ourselves. Obviously, stuff happens, external things happens to us. That's not me doing it to myself. But to understand what that verse is I am the one that says yes or no. Am I going to choose to see the Spirit in it or not? And the goal, if I want to have salvation, as this is saying, then I want to see the Spirit. I actually want to practice seeing the unity in all beings. If I see the unity in all beings, I attain the infinite Spirit. That's how I'm doing this to myself. What if I don't perceive the unity in separate beings? Then I don't attain the infinite Spirit. So then who's responsible for that? Me. I'm doing it to myself. That's all that means. It doesn't mean we get to go blame victims for things. That's not that at all. I'm a therapist, though. I work with people who get victimized a lot. And guess what we have to work on? Well, we take care of the physical stuff, what happened to you as a victim, but then we work on the inner stuff. How to learn things like forgiveness and justice and pursue those things. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But just do it with love. And now you're free. Otherwise, you're saddled with that burden the rest of your life. You'll never escape it. Okay? So, pulling it all together, it's actually really simple. We need premium grade fuel. Who's in charge of that? You. How do you get it? Ask and you will receive. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. I don't think you can make it any more clear than that. Know ye not your gods?